Well, hello, Mr. Newton.
That's right. What's up, Mr. Chad?
Not much, man. Been house cleaning and taking advantage of this downtime to get some crap done, like house cleaning. We were talking about home studios the other day on the phone. So that's kind of what I've been up to. And you told me about your master plan to build a special structure right in your backyard.
That's right. So we actually have the contractors coming tomorrow, and we've got to go through some HOA and there's a process for it, but they're coming tomorrow and kind of get some things mapped out. You know, it's something we were kind of working on about 6 months ago, and we've decided it's time to pull the trigger.
Well, speaking of triggers, I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on slapping a number on this thing.
What number is it today?
This is number 209, or 209, as Patrick would say, if he were here. So, yeah, Patrick is on holiday, sort of, in Ireland. He went back home to attend a memorial for a friend of his, Barry Dunphy, who died recently. I'm sure he's spending time with family. I know that he's at his mom's house because he told me he checked out the bass guitar we left behind, his Ibanez bass, which we decided to leave over there because of all the problems that we were having getting our instruments to and from Ireland. You know, it's a huge hassle these days trying to go on aircraft with guitars and basses and so forth. So he suggested that we do the show in his absence. He called it the Rhythm Sexy. This will be the first show that Kevin and I have done without Patrick. So, man, how's it going?
It's going good. I got some good news. Stacy today, she's negative COVID. So,
oh, fantastic. Good.
Yeah, it actually couldn't, I hate to say it, come on a better time, with the down week, but, it's Team Newton's been pretty much shut down for about 7-10 days here. But she's negative. My youngest son's negative. And
excellent.
Sure enough, as soon as she's negative today, what's the first thing we do? She's like, we're going exercising, I think for 2 years straight, she's only missed 2 times exercising, and this is one of them, and she just was dying. So,
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so we did. It was kind of funny. I got a funny story for you. So she goes, it's going to be about 45 minutes. I'm like, all right, I'll go with you, right? So we just kind of go for like a power walk, right? We're not quite running, but we're just getting back into it. And she's like, and she's not going to run yet. She's going to wait a couple more days and ease back into it. Well, her power walk for me, I might as well be jogging. So we're moving quick. And it just seemed like it was going so long that I'm like, this is longer than I expected, longer than you led me to believe. And she looks at her watch and it was exactly 46 minutes. 1 minute passed when she said, and it was like the funniest thing. We both started laughing because it was like perfect timing when I started complaining. But that's all right. I sucked it up. We finished it up. She was happy. And,
that's great.
We're back. And so I'm glad to see it. I told her today, you're not pregnant, so that's good. She tested negative, but
yeah. She
didn't find that as funny, but
I'm glad it was relatively, I know it was rough for her while it was going on, but I'm glad it didn't last too much longer.
Yeah.
She
was sick, it hit her. No fever though, which was good. So she didn't have to battle that, but it's crazy that I'm still talking about that, but it's still here, and you just have to kind of deal with it when it comes.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I still see. I don't really wear a mask anymore when I go out. I haven't for a long time, but I still see people. Like just recently, I've seen like an uptick in mask. voluntary mask wearing around the Houston area. So people are still a little nervous about it. So you tell me about your home studio idea. Was this something that hit you? You guys were already going to build something in the back. Was that right?
Yeah, we always made the jokes. We call it the pool house, but we wanted to build a studio, a place where it was kind of separate from our house, where we could, kind of have a private area. We can be as loud as we want. We can do what we want in it. And, just an ultimate studio. And, Stacy and I have done some of our own podcasting. We haven't released anything yet, but we do things kind of behind the scenes. And, Stacy's online all the time with her brand. And so we just thought it's time, I think this would really be beneficial. And, for me, I'm banging on the drums in the house and, it's not the quietest instrument. And so we have plenty of space. And so I said, let's just go for it. And so we already have pre-construction plans. I mean, we're partway through it, and, they're just going to come back out and kind of reevaluate everything and see what we want to do. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah. And so we'll kind of start the process. So, I'm not sure. I would probably guess, I think this might be a 3-month deal, 2 to 3 month deal, but.
Oh, wow. It's fast.
Yeah, it's not, some of the hard work's already done. We just have to get some plans approved, and there's a few changes we're going to do, but
Cool.
Stacy's a big gardener too, so we're gonna have some things we got to incorporate, and then we'll just be off the races.
Nice. So, yeah, I'll be following that with much interest from your progress. As I mentioned too, I'm starting to get finally pulling my closet apart so I can refit it as a vocal booth. It's a walk-in closet I have in my front room, and I've been living in this apartment for a very long time, but I've only just kept junk in there. I've never really used it for anything. It's just been a place where I just throw the stuff in here to get rid of it. And it was a while ago. I was thinking, God, as much as I love living here, it's an old fourplex house, of which there are many in the Houston area, like war era. I think it was built in the 40s. So the walls are really thin. So like if anybody raises their voice, we all hear each other, and you can hear. So I've always been very aware of that and try not to make too much noise. So that when I practice singing, I can't really do it here, just open up like where I'm sitting right now. Everybody would hear it, and it would, for a few seconds, it'd probably be okay. But if I was doing it for, 30 minutes, an hour at a time,
sure, people
would lose their minds. So I haven't really done a whole lot of singing at home, but it occurred to me one afternoon that I've got this closet here, and it's the only room. It's not a room, but the closet has this old carpeting on the floor. So that was one of the first things that caught my attention. I was like, oh, wait a second. So as an experiment, I don't have it with me, my little Wonder Boom Bluetooth speaker, and I put it in there and just cranked it to full volume and then closed the door, and it went like you could almost just barely hear it. Just as it is now. That was with a bunch of crap in the closet I've already taken out. But so I'm in the process of gutting it and pulling everything out. And so now I have all this crap around my room and trying to figure out what to do with it now. Like, I'm going to throw you out. I'm going to keep you. I don't know what I'm going to do with you yet. That type of thing. Like it's like junk triage. Like, what am I going to do with it? And but I've got these couple of old packing blankets, like moving blankets that that our friend Greg Fugate gave to me, and Patrick has some of them too. And some of them, we gave some of them to Paul Beebe for his recording studio. And so that's one thing I'm going to do. But I was thinking about getting some, cheap, those acoustic foam tiles.
Yeah.
And just tacking them up on the wall. Just coat the entire, it's just, it's small enough. I think I could coat the entire wall, the entire circumference of the room, of the closet. And then above me, I'll put those packing blankets and just stuff as much like pillows and old coats and sleeping bags that I'm not using anymore, just to try to cushion me from my upstairs neighbor. So he's really the only person who's directly exposed to whatever I'm going to be doing in that closet. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm thinking that, maybe put some ring light around, so it's least pleasant to be in there.
Yeah. Create that environment so that way it's a little more enjoyable.
So that's going to open up a whole new world for me living here, that I'll be able to be musically productive in a way I just have never really done since I moved in here. So I'm very excited about that.
Dude, that's so cool you're saying that, because that's really the exact same thing we're talking about. It's like I'm finding ways to play drums quieter. You're trying to, I play with the mesh heads. I with my quiet cymbals. I'm always going down, and I'm like, what happens if I were to go up? A place where you can just let it rip. And so that's kind of the same idea, where you just insulate it up and make this thing, make it rad. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be really, really freaking cool. And this comes on the heels, of course. Patrick has been in the process of building out his studio at his new house up in Huntsville, where we've done some rehearsal. In fact, last week's episode had some footage from a rehearsal. So we're all,
I love his place. It's
busy
cool.
doing this. Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. His place is cool. It's comfortable. So I love it. It's so nice. And then you're sitting there on the lake. I'm like, if you ever feel like you want to complain in life, just hang out there for 10 minutes. You're good. It's your calibration zone.
Yeah. So one of the things that, as far as pulling stuff out of that closet, one of the things I was pulling out of there was my old VCR, which my dad gave to me like probably 20 years ago, and a stack of all these VHS tapes that I've been carrying around with me since the 1980s. And I always intended, like, I got to figure out how to get the stuff onto digital. And 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't really feasible because of just storage limitations. And also it was just, I didn't have, decent enough equipment to do it properly. And you have these services where you send tapes off for them to transfer it. And that's okay if you got maybe, a couple of them, but with the amount of stuff I have, it would be prohibitively expensive to pay somebody else to do it. So, but technology has come along now, and storage is cheaper. So, and I've got a network attached storage, a NAS with mass storage at home. So I'm not really worried about that anymore. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger and bought like the cheapest thing I could find that had good reviews to transfer stuff from the VCR to my PC. And I mean, that's the other thing. I'm amazed that this thing still works. It's like it's a Sony VCR that was probably made in the late 90s. It's very old, but it still works. And I've been having a lot of fun watching this old stuff. A couple of old things from my past, but also just old movies. I have all my dad's VHS tapes too, and one of them is 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I was watching that. The picture quality is terrible compared to what we're used to these days, but it was just so kind of. It was like comfort food watching this old,
for sure,
fuzzy VHS image. So one of the things I've found that I knew I had, I just hadn't. I thought for sure it would be deteriorated by now. Is a couple of cassettes of my band Elemental Penguin's first performance at my high school, HSPVA, back from February 1987. So it's a very, very long time ago. We're coming up. God, I guess we just passed like whatever that is, the 36th anniversary. Is that right? From 1987, I think that was, my math is a little.
36?
36th anniversary of that, of that particular performance. So
46?
that tape is...
No. 36.
36, yeah. Yeah, I'm not quite that old yet. Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it might as well be. But, those tapes are 36 years old, and that's insane. They still work, but that's not the only... I have older cassettes than that, actually, that I was checking out. But not of that band, but just of other goofings around that I had from when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
So I think I'm getting that device tomorrow. So if I have time, I might drop in a little bit of footage of that. Because you and I were chatting the other day, and we were saying maybe we could talk about our earliest performances. So when that band Elemental Penguin, that was the first time I ever performed live with a band. Was my senior year in high school. When was your first time performing?
I think it would have been 90. Had to have been 96, 95, 96. It would have been in high school.
You're around the same age I was,
performing
probably.
In bands, but that was more school. But my first punk rock band was like 95 or 6.
Were you in high school at the time?
In high school, yeah.
Yeah.
We played our first show because I graduated in 98. So I think it would have been my sophomore year, freshman year, something like that. And we went out to California. We played at the Showcase Theater in Corona, California. One of my first shows. I don't even know how we got this show. Like the one guy in the band knew people or something. And I was the kid in the band, and it was just packed. Like I was freaking out. Like
that was the very first performance.
Like we played like a party and we did like a thing like that. That was the first like show. Like we played like a show. And we played with a band called Straight Faced, kind of a, Fearless Records band. It was in that scene, in that area, and we played the Showcase Theater, and we were the first band. And I remember they were doing the sound check. I'd never done anything like that before. And so I'm like, the guy's going, kick. And I thought he was saying kit. So I just kept playing the kit. And he literally comes out and he's getting upset, and he's trying to communicate with me, but you tell he's getting mad. Another guy in another band came out.
Oh,
because he could tell, man, I was probably 15 or 16 years old.
Yeah, you're just kidding.
He could tell I was struggling, and he was like, dude, the bass drum. And I was like, oh, he's saying kick. I was like, at that point I was like, oops. Oh God, and so I got through that, and then, we played okay, we played well, and we just, you're up there just playing power chords and as fast as you can play, and take a big deep breath and just go, and you play your 20, I think we played 25, 30 minutes or something, and have the whole thing on tape, and so.
Oh, you do?
I do. I have it on tape. And so I think I have it. I was starting to look through it after we talked, but I got to dig around a little bit. But I'm.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I'm 99% positive I have this on tape.
If you can, if you can actually don't destroy the tape in your efforts to see. But if you could just get film it with your phone or something, just something.
See if I can get it.
Yeah, that would be really cool. That's crazy. I was going to ask you if you had a tape of it. That's trippy.
Yeah, my buddy was in the band, another guitar player. His dad came and filmed it. He drove us.
Nice.
And,
I'm sure
I'll never forget. After the show, we're like, "So what'd you think?" And he was like, he went,
Was it not his, just because it wasn't his kind of music, or?
We fumbled through it, and it was the first time in a setting like that. And at the time you think it's okay, right? But you just kind of look back now, and I'm like, oh man, you're brand new. You're kids, you're just kids up there playing.
Yeah.
I remember a couple songs in, I had dropped a stick, and my heart was beating out of my chest the whole time. I never settled in, and it took a minute, and then, and then you get a couple of those under your belt, and then you're fine. But
was this Pummel, or was this a different band?
It was a different band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long were we all together? That band?
I think in high school. We were together a year or two in high school.
Okay.
High school band.
What was the name of the band?
Crack.
Nice.
Yes. Yep. That was the name of the band. I found some stickers, and Pummel came after that. Then Pummel formed, and that was a long-term band. We were a band for a while, and
that was you and your brother, right?
Yeah, he was in the band. A few other members, and we were a 5-piece for a while. Then we actually got down to a 3-piece, and so we. And then Pummel was the 3-piece for a long time, many years.
Was your brother in Crack as well?
He was about halfway through. And so he was about halfway through the band. I worked with this guy, and he was probably mid-20s. And I worked for this kids camp, and he was like, "Hey, I hear you play drums." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was probably 15 at the time. And he's like, "We need a drummer. You're our drummer." And I was like, "Okay." They were older guys, and I thought, "Oh, they're cool. I'll just drum for them." So I remember going home. I'm like, "Mom, Dad, I'm drumming for this punk rock band now." And so I was drumming for him, and my brother played guitar, and he was like, "Well, I want to be in the band." And I was like, "All right, well, let me get into the band first." And so I got in and played, and I told him, "If you want me to be the drummer, you got to bring my brother in his guitar." And he's like, "Well, we already have 2 guitar players." And I was like, "Well, that's the deal." And so they were like, they kicked a guy out, and my brother came in. So, oh man, looking back, I'm like, oh God, but I wanted to be with him. I had comfort with my twin brother there. So
yeah.
Sure. That's kind of how that took off. So,
did you perform a lot throughout high school, or?
Yeah, we actually performed a lot. One of the guys in the band was a promoter, and so he always was bringing shows into my hometown in Lake Havasu. And so, man, we bring all these cool bands in, and big in that '90s kind of punk rock scene. And so we got to open for just all these bands. We were the local band.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, we really had a good thing with that, and just. We would play in front of, 400 or 500 people, all these little shows. And we'd be at the cinema or the little local place that we played, the roller rink, where they held all the punk rock shows, and
yeah.
And
can you remember, cool. You mentioned that first show was a little shaky because you're just nerves and inexperience and stuff. Can you remember when it felt like things were starting to click a little more? I think
it was more Pummel.
Was it Pummel?
Yeah, I think that's when it clicked. I was a little bit older, and I think I had the experience then. I was so young, and I was always surrounded by all these older guys. And at the time, right, a 15, 16-year-old kid to a 25-year-old, it's ginormous. And so I always was just, I was a little intimidated by them at the time, and and then as you get older, you're just not anymore. And so,
right.
But,
yeah, I didn't. The Elemental Penguin, that high school band, as fond of that band as we were, my friend Dwight, whom I'm still very close friends with, he and I do web design together now occasionally, and he and I were in other bands after Elemental Penguin. We loved that band, but because there was so much going on, we only formed halfway through our senior year. And by that point, we were all so busy, getting ready to go to college and try to finish our school year out and not fail our classes,
Right.
So we played really only had 2 full shows. There was that first one, which is the videotaped performance I'm talking about, which was really momentous occasion for me and everybody else in the band performing for the first time. And then we had a performance at a city park called Fleming Park, which is a couple blocks away from where my dad's house was, and where my dad continued to live until the day he died. And that was some kind of benefit event that we had 3 backup singers in the band. Camille Zamora, who's now a professional opera singer, in New York, I think is where she lives now. I think she got that gig for us, and we threw that because we had to play a lot longer than we really only knew like 7 or 8 songs from start to finish at that point. So we it was like the morning of the gig. We met at Lisa, another one of the backup singers' houses, and I brought my Beatles songbook that I gotten for Christmas, and we just went through and tried to find the easiest things to learn on the fly. It was insane. And then the only other 2 gigs we had where we played just one song during what PVA had these things called happenings, which were lunchtime concerts. There wasn't always music. It could be any kind of performance. Sometimes theater people would come up and do little short plays and things like that. But Elemental Penguin played 2 happenings, and I think we played.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, those were always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But that was it. And then we always intended to, I remember actually that summer, Dwight and I were going around talking to clubs and stuff about possibly getting Elemental Penguin to play shows, but it was just, we couldn't pull it together because everybody was leaving and everything. But so I didn't really start performing for real. Kind of similar to you and Pummel. I joined a band called The Change later that same year. So November, December '87. But we had, my first gig with them was playing a wedding of a friend. And kind of similar to some of the early Penguin performances, we learned a bunch of songs overnight, and it was like a mess, trying to fill up a whole, wedding reception gig. We were all like, 18, 19 years old. I think the bass player was 16. He hadn't even graduated high school yet. So it was a mess, but we pulled ourselves together after that. And I remember thinking that gig went so horribly. I thought, well, surely that's the end of that. But Andy Zubik, who was the leader of that band, said, "Oh no, we're not done yet," And so we kept going, and that was one of my I have such fond memories of being in that band. We had a really solid work ethic, the 4 of us. And
nice.
Dwight later joined that band too towards the end of our time together. But again, kind of similar to was Pummel? You said it was only, how long was Pummel together? Like 2.
Man, Pummel was together a while.
I was thinking of Crack. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that was 2 years, year or 2.
So yeah,
I think a couple years. It's a high school band. Yeah,
right. That's kind of when The Change wasn't a high school band, not for me anyway. But we only lasted, I think, 80-something, 2.5 years, I think, from when I joined, but so much happened in that little 2-year span. That this was, you think about those years right after you graduate high school, and just how much is going on. Your brain's being hit by all these new things that are happening to you, and you're growing up. You're
for sure
being responsible for the first time. You get your first job and all this stuff. So it was a really heady time for me. But thinking about all the stuff that the band went through, which eventually pulled us apart, we were just too young to weather those stresses. Because I thought about this many times. That everything that led to the band breaking up, Blaggards has been through tenfold. And we've always managed to pull through because to me, I credit partially for me anyway, the experience I had early on. It's like, okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to make this mistake again. I'm sorry. Or, every time I get to that point, it's like, okay, what did I do in the changes to make sure I don't make that decision?
And I think some of the things that happen, really communication,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's just so, I can't even, it sounds so cliche, but communication is key.
It is huge.
I look back at things now and I'm like, was that really a problem? Or is it just the way it was worked through, and that's why I make those comments all the time about Be the Water. That's really comes from all that. It's like, you just, remove that objection and really find out if you want it to last and you want it to keep going, you got to be willing to do what it takes, and just, you got to work through it, and you got to let things go. And, if you want to have long-term relationships with people, you got to let little things go.
Absolutely.
You got to just roll with things, and you got to be forgiving, and you got to have good boundaries, and you got to just be honest, and then also get around a group of guys or girls and just crush. You have to be all in with it. And so
absolutely.
That's what I've learned over all these years.
Yeah. I think a big part of it for me too was understanding the dynamics of a band. It wasn't just my mistake. We all kind of naively made this mistake thinking that we could have 3 creative forces driving one ship, not saying that you can't have multiple creative minds in a band. You need multiple creative minds in a band. But when I joined, Andy was really the leader of the band. And it worked really well that way. But then when Dwight joined, he and I kind of became the separate figurehead. Like he and I, we started kind of trying to do all the things that we intended to do in Elemental Penguin, like moving in kind of a different direction. Like, because Andy and I used to write together, and then when Dwight joined, he and I would write together, and Andy and I kind of drifted apart creatively, and that was one of the things that this happens in so many bands, that the original leader of the band starts to lose control of the creative direction of everything. And so Andy started getting disillusioned with it. This was my interpretation of the way, but if you're watching Andy, I guess we haven't talked about this, but this is what I observed, It just seemed like he lost enthusiasm for it, and then we all subsequently lost enthusiasm for it because there was no center anymore. And we kind of, so then when those stresses came, we had a drummer who had an addiction problem. And all those little arguments you mentioned, silly things that kids will argue about and adults. We just couldn't survive that, we just kind of.
Yeah. When you have those added stressors in, especially, you got the addiction side or the certain party side. And, you guys and I talked about this at the beginning when I was joining, and it was like, hey, where's everyone at? When I was asking those questions, because it's like, it's not if, it's when. It's just a time bomb waiting to go off. And, and so we've all been a part of that. And so,
yeah.
Like, I can't, that's not, it's not something I look forward to. But I've seen guys that are super talented just get completely derailed because of this outside thing, and it's like, they're so short-lived. Yeah. Whether it's just partying or, they get wrapped up in these relationships and this dysfunction, and you're just like, man, you're really just tying your arms behind your back and wondering why you're struggling all the time.
Yeah.
It's like you're self-sabotaging almost.
Right.
But it's funny you asked me about, we were kind of talking, like you said the other day, about when we were younger in our 20s and different bands. I'm like, man, what would I bring up? It's like, I think I had all these thoughts just coming in, and I wanted to share this one story. And so
let's hear it.
This was with Pummel. And what's funny is when Pummel started, we were a kind of more of a pop punk band, I guess we would call that now, punk rock, but more of that 90s sort of pop style. And when we got Adam as a singer, I loved him. He, we evolved, and this is when we turned into a 3-piece. We turned more into a rock style band. We kind of played a little bit more into Adam's strengths. And we got this Battle of the Bands gig where we were, we auditioned and we sent them the tapes, and we got in Nevada, and they let us in. And so it was at this casino, and it was so funny is you had to be over 21 to get in. At the time, my brother and I were 21, and Adam, I think, was 17 or 16 or say he was, he was in high school, and he was the young one. And so he had to like wait outside kind of, and come in. But we played this Battle of the Bands, and we got all the way through all the days, and we actually ended up winning this thing. And
oh, wow.
It was crazy. I was just excited to get in, right? And we win this thing, and there's these 3 judges, and this one judge comes up to us, and he's like, man, I really liked your stuff. I worked with this label and, this record label and yada, yada, yada. And he gives us his information, his card and all this and that. And we're like, who are you? We don't know, right? So we like look him up, and it was Richard Dashit. It was Fleetwood Mac's producer. He was a guest judge at this Battle of the Bands.
Wow.
And we're like, oh my gosh. So we sent him this demo. He's like, send me this demo. We sent him this demo, and he's like, man, this was nothing like I saw you live. What is this demo? This is not the same. He goes, I want the energy that I saw live. That's what I want. And I just remember thinking, now I look back and I'm like, it doesn't matter if there's 5 people at the show or 2,000. Look who's watching. We didn't know this guy was there. We didn't know he was a judge. I can't tell you the other 2 judges' names now. It's like you don't know who's there. And because we were like, we're just going to bring everything we got, it led us to this. And that we had a long run with that label. We never really closed the deal with them. I did get a record deal with them.
Yeah.
We never got off the shelf with it. But it was, I tell that story because I'm like, man, it's just, you never know at any show, at any moment, who can be there. You just bring it,
Yeah.
And so.
Patrick says that all the time. It's like, you never know who's going to be there.
You never know.
But people always remark that even when we played a small crowd compared to, like shows where there's 100 people there or more, we always bring the same amount of energy. And that's part of it, but it's like really the reason why we do that because we're there to have fun. You know, at the end of the day, that is the whole point of it. And I find it funny that's even an issue for any bands. Like, you're on stage, you're performing, fucking throw down. Why, otherwise go home. You know, what are you doing it for? You have all the effort you put into the rehearsals and getting the gear there and stuff. That's the whole point of it, I think. Oh, did I lose you? Uh-oh.
I lost you, brother. Did the internet go out?
All right, so not sure. I think we're talking about your first recording contract that you got with was it with Pummel, right?
Yeah, it was with Pummel.
Yeah.
So the label was Emergent Records, and so they did one of Dishwalla's albums, like kind of later in Dishwalla's career.
Okay.
And we worked with their former AR guy. His name was Mark. Can't remember his last name, but Mark. And so we were hooked up with them for a while. And so we worked up with them, and I mean, they set us up with all kinds of shows. You know, we did the Whiskey in Hollywood, and we did all kinds of places. And man, we were touring like crazy, you know, I mean, I think one year we did 160, 170 shows. We were just constantly as many places we can play. We do 2-3 shows a day. It didn't matter. Just one person there, didn't matter. They were just like, get as much road work at time as you can.
Wow.
And we would play acoustic. We would play full volume. We would play coffee shops. We play malls. We did some mall shows and just the craziest places. But
you never actually got around to releasing albums, though? Is that what you were saying? Yeah.
No, we got a deal with them, you know, at the time, you know, without giving away too much of the laundry. Adam was a minor, and so his parents were involved with the deal, and, you know, we got the deal, and it wasn't quite what they wanted, and we just never closed the deal. You know, we never signed the deal on our side.
Okay.
Yeah, we never formally signed a deal with them, and so they kept working with us for a while, and then they were like, well, hey, we're going to close this deal. At this point, we kind of had agreed to what we wanted to do, and we got to a point, you know, with the attorneys and everything, hey, this is what we want to do, and everything seemed to be fine on track. And they came out. We actually, man, we had this thing in the paper. They had all of our family come out. They flew people in and had this big dinner, and then a couple hours before the dinner, they were like, hey, we're going to shelve you for another year. And they kind of ripped on Adam a little bit, and, you know.
Really?
Yeah, they kind of ripped apart some of his things, and you know, I wasn't a big fan of it, you know, and, you know, I stepped in and, you know, sort of Daddy Kevin here, and I just, you know, I told them that, you know, hey, it's this meeting's over, you know, it's not him. We're a band, and if it's something he's doing, it's something we're doing.
Was this behavior or something they had an issue with? Or
no, some of his diction and his voice, you know, they just ripped him apart. He was
that's right. Okay, you mentioned that in a previous conversation.
I love the way he did it, you know, and he kind of flowed that way. I think he's amazing. You know, I haven't talked to him in a long time, a couple of things here and there. I know he's in Chicago, I believe, and he draws really well. He's an artist. And so
cool.
I know he's pursuing that, and he's always performing. And he did, I think, a show with that guy, Snyder, what's his name? Dean Snyder. Who's the guy with the kind of long curly hair? I forget his name.
Oh, Dee Snyder? From Twisted Sister.
Twisted Sister, that's it. And so I know he did his play with him, and
nice.
He did all kinds of stuff. He had some songs. I think he did Resident Evil on the soundtrack, and, you know, he's done well, you know, he's done well. And
no kidding.
Super proud of him, man. He's just, you know, I know we kind of drifted apart, but he, those guys struggled, you know, with that kind of feedback. They just, you know, and I kept telling them, man, we're just going to do another demo. We'll get another set of 6 songs, and we're going to keep going. And, you know, we eventually parted ways with the label, but, you know, we went after a different way. And so.
That's crazy. So this was late 90s, I guess, or early 2000s?
Early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of late 90s, early 2000s. I was 21-ish time. I'd say 21, early 20s. So this would be like early 2000s, you know.
So that's probably the guy. You guys are probably one of the last punk bands to get, you know, actual artist development going on with a label. I don't think there's any major label actually looking for that kind of band anymore. It's like, I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, it's like, you know, you look at what's popular, because that was back when you know, Foo Fighters were still, I mean, Foo Fighters are still huge, but everybody was still, they were looking for the next Foo Fighters at that point. because that was still kind of a fresh thing, right? Because you had.
I don't even know if they were I think they were still early, if they were even rolling then. They might have been at that time. All those years kind of seem to push together, at this point. But
I'm just thinking of all that post grunge stuff. There was Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden and my timing of the year is maybe really off because this is a long time ago. But it's funny thinking about the around 2000, 2001. It seems on the one hand it seems like ages ago because it was over 20 years ago, but it also didn't seem. In the span of my life, that's when I ran around the time I turned 30. So it's like, it doesn't feel, well, I was an adult. I've been an adult for a while. So it doesn't really feel like that long ago, but then again, it does. It's a strange thing. So my memory of what was going on in the music industry at that point is a little hazy, but I just know that you don't hear about that those types of bands are our type of band now, guitar, bass, drums, bands like that it's not likely it never happens, but that isn't really who the big labels are looking for anymore. They want the Taylor Swifts and the I don't know who's the Harry Styles, all those people.
Yeah,
right.
They definitely were development. I mean, there was this place. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's in I was West Coast, so it's called Clown Records, and it was a place in I think Hollywood or LA, somewhere around there. I don't know what the actual address would be, but it was like a studio, and all these famous bands were in there. And I remember one time we walked out, they would just put us up there. We'd be on tour and they would stick us in there for 2 days, all day. And we'd just be rehearsing and they'd have people come in and, hey, try this and try that. And, they were trying to help you work through songs, and we would get through a song and they'd be like, all right, well, this one sounds like this. So we're going to scratch this and change this. I mean, they were really trying to get us to get a certain type of record, right? They wanted us to have a complete record. And I just remember one time we walked out and Nikki Sixx was there with a few other people. And he was sitting right out front on the phone and he gave us the nice job.
That's cool.
I mean, I wasn't even like a huge fan of their stuff, but I just was so pumped,
It's a big deal. Yeah.
Dude, these guys are just super famous and we're just these kids, like I always felt like we shouldn't be here, we shouldn't be here. And just, it was just, I don't know. I think what would have been good for that band is to actually have direction internally away from the record, almost like your own manager, your own parent. I always say it was like we were these kids and sort of unparented, navigating through these things that we had no idea, right?
So there was and within your ranks and actual band members, there was no guiding light as far as.
That's right.
Yeah.
We were just sort of winging it. And, it was us making decisions with little to no experience in these realms, right? We have attorneys and I mean, man, you don't even know what they're saying. You're just at the time, you're sort of just taking it on, right? And you look back and the label's like, we're like, hey, we don't have money for an attorney, and they're like, well, we'll pay for your attorney. And you look back now and you're like, wait a minute, the people we're negotiating with are supporting and funding the people that are negotiating for us. You kind of look at these things and you're like, it kind of works, but I look back, I'm like, I'd have done things a lot differently.
Yeah.
So
sounds like you guys just needed more time. I mean, being so young,
Yeah.
It makes me think of the story. It was a completely different time, but when Talking Heads first got signed, they were what we would call indie now. They got signed to Sire Records in the mid to late, I guess it was 1977. Right when the punk movement was really kind of starting to hit, mainstream, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And the head of Sire Records, I'm trying to remember what his name was. He had discovered them at CBGB's in New York, where a lot of bands got started. The Ramones, Blondie. He loved the band and wanted to sign them like right then and there. But David Byrne, the whole band kind of agreed, said, "No, we're not ready yet," because they'd only been together for less than a year, I think, at that point. Not very long. They just felt like they weren't ready to go through the stress that you guys were being put through. But although I'm sure it wasn't the kind of development that was you guys were being subjected to at that point, was not. I don't think that the people at Sire Records were telling Talking Heads what songs to play or whatever. But they wanted them just the way they were when they first signed, because that was still such a rough and raw period where it's like, okay, punk rock, nobody knows what this is. Let's just sign these guys and see how they do. Let's just sign these guys and see how they do. It's completely different, frontiersman type period for the business. But I always admired that's one of the most remarkable parts of Talking Heads' story, is that they put the pause button on their record contract of their own volition. It's like, no, we're not ready yet. Let's talk again in a year, or however long it was. And then, Society Records was like, okay. And I'm sure there must have been other labels competing for them by the time they finally signed. But I think obviously in the end, they decided to sign with Sire anyway. I think probably because they had the most creative freedom with them. I'm not sure. But I love that story. It's just it was a very wise decision, I think, on their part. It makes me wonder, like, what would have happened if they hadn't, waited,
One decision.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. One changes the whole trajectory. You know, it's like, it's crazy if you think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those were good times.
I find that fascinating because what y'all went through, I've never been that close to a record contract. And now have, like I'm saying, that what you guys went through is bands like that probably don't get that experience anymore from labels anyway, because the industry just isn't looking for that now. And I just wonder, I've heard that it's a common complaint from industry people who've been in the industry for a long time. Like Rick Beato has a very popular YouTube channel. He's been through everything. He's seen everything happen through the industry changing. You don't really get artist development anymore. And if you do, it's like somebody finding a singer they like, and then they write all the material for them and hire musicians to play the material. And it's not really an issue of there's every band you can think of, like Sabbath, Genesis, when they first started, it was labels. Frank Zappa had a really good way of putting it. And I'm sure I've mentioned this on the show before in years past, but Frank Zappa was bemoaning this fact too in the late 80s, that there just wasn't the same kind of artist development that there was in the late 60s and 70s, that there was because of the older, it was actually better when you had older people like from the Frank Sinatra era, from the 40s and 50s, coming into what was happening in the 60s and 70s, because they had a little bit more of a adventurous entrepreneurial spirit. He said, like, I don't know what this is. I'm going to take a chance on it. You take a chance on you guys. We'll see. I don't even like your music, but hey, let's take a chance. Come on, let's see what happens. And as the music industry has gotten more mature, and especially now when things have completely changed in the digital age, that people don't really want to take chances anymore. And I think that's why you hear popular music. The whole game with popular music now is to take no chances. Like, let's write a song, especially what's going on in country right now. Every new hit has to sound as much like every previous hit as possible. And it's like this weird kind of disgusting stagnation that's been going on. Like, every song sounds the same. And man, you compare it to how things moved from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and even through the 90s. There was just so much was changing, from year to year. And I maybe I'm just old, but I don't see that anymore. Everything's fragmented now, and it's at once kind of wonderful and kind of depressing in a way. But it's good because bands like us can find our niche audience. We can home in on it, because of the internet. People are able to find us easily. We're able to find them. But as far as the potential for bands to really blow up on the scale of like U2, like they did, like in 1987, the year I was mentioning earlier, that doesn't really happen. You hit bands like Ghost hit it really big, but as far as that level of success, that the Beatle era of rock bands, I think is well over. Maybe for the best, there's different things happening now. That's the thing. You always kind of have to look on the bright side, that the way the industry is now has enabled a whole different kind of thing, which I'm not really sure how to describe right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We kind of rambled there for a minute.
Yeah, no, it's funny. My kids, especially, my middle son, he doesn't listen to, not even close to what I'm into and listen to and play. And
yeah.
And, but I will say this, they got to come see Blaggards play for the first time a couple Saturdays ago. And, his opinion on it, I was actually seeking the most. Because he kind of listens to this, not techno, but kind of like that dark Five Nights at Freddy music. That's just his thing, and he loves it. And so I was like, I wonder what he thinks. And he said he loved it. He's like, man, I just had such a good time. And he laughed when you were introduced as Jeff Bezos, and he kept telling me that's the funniest thing, and you guys are just so good, and I just had such a good time. And
cool.
It was so genuine, because he's not one to tell you otherwise, and I wanted to share that because he was just like, oh man. And he's like, he goes, now I get it. Now I know why they call you Turbo. And now I get it. He goes, and now I understand. He goes, it just seems so much fun. You just look like you're having so much fun. And he goes, now I understand why you're doing it. And so I just,
why did he understand why your nickname is Turbo?
Because he says you move really fast. He's like, I don't know how you do that. You move really fast. He doesn't know. He's not there for my rehearsals, and he doesn't experience it from my vantage point. So he's just like, it was funny. It was good times.
By the way, Patrick has given nicknames to all of us, but I think you're the only person was given a nickname like immediately upon. He had that name for you right after the first time we met. And because even before you knew it, I knew what your nickname was. She said, okay, so we'll get Turbo back in here. And I was like, wait, is that your nickname for Kevin? He's like, yeah, I don't know why. I just keep calling him Turbo. He didn't even really give it much thought. It just kind of jumped into his head. Just felt natural. It's kind of weird.
I know. Mike busted him. Did I tell you that story?
No.
Yeah, Mike did. He told me that because he told me before you guys told me. He goes, oh, that's your nickname, by the way.
Oh.
He came over my house and we did a rehearsal together. He was like, that's your nickname. Like, all right, well, that works. That's fine. I go, whatever.
But it's different. Mike was always Mike the Machine, McAloon or McClune, which was that's a joke that goes back to his high school. His coach used to call him McClune. So we started calling him McClune, which got short to Clooney and all this stuff. But we didn't just, we call you Turbo. Everybody in the band calls you Turbo now. Nobody called Mike the Machine, call him Machine. Hey, Machine. Yeah, that just didn't happen. And like me being Impaler, that is the most common nickname that has persisted. Nobody calls me that as a name, it's just something that comes out on stage. So you've got a special distinction there. That really hasn't happened with anybody else in the history of the band that I can think of.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It just kind of glommed onto you. It's like, Turbo, Kevin.
That's what people call me at the shows. They call me that at the shows.
Yeah, people love that.
That's when I kind of play this dance. And so we're like, because he'll introduce me to people, and it's about 50-50. Turbo, Kevin. It depends on where we are. And I'm like, just roll with it, man. Just turbo it up, Because I think he looks at me like, is he cool with it? Like, just roll with it, man. It's fine.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that's all sign things. I just signed Turbo now. I'm like, Kevin's gone. I'm like, that's this chapter. So I'm like, let it roll.
That's awesome. Did you ever have nicknames with any of your previous bands? Was that ever a thing?
Kev. It was always Kev. Just short, and yeah. Kev. I don't know. If I had him, I don't remember him now. It wasn't nothing like this. I think this is really my first main name, other than friends calling you nicknames, different stuff.
Right.
My dad called me Cheeto. That's my
Cheeto.
Cheeto. He's called me that for so long. I don't even know when it started, to be honest with you. I call him Weech, and he calls me Cheeto, and it's just, I'm not sure where they came from, but when we talk, we'll get together and talk every so often. We'll call each other that.
What is Weech? Where does that come from?
I think he called me Cheeto, and one time I tried to come up with something, so I called him Weecho, and then I was like, nah, it's dumb, and then it just turned into Weech. It just sort of adapted into Weech, and then he's like, all right, Cheeto, And so, yeah. It's those little things, that camaraderie. I love it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think that Patty doesn't really have a nickname either. We've tried to come up with ones. With Mike, for a while, was calling him Power Pig.
Power Pig?
Yeah, and I can't remember where that came from.
I call him Boss Man.
The other's Boss Man. That's true.
I'm trying to get that to stick. It kind of has a little runs in and out, but I'm just like, I'm not giving up on it.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up. Just go Boss Man.
For me, it's just always Patty, because that's and that I didn't even call him that to begin with, but it became the default after a while. And part of the reason was that Turi, our first fiddle player, started dating somebody named Patrick. So when he was around, I couldn't have two Patricks. It was just too confusing. So I started defaulting to Patty, which I already knew was the nickname he used. But Yeah. Anyway, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. I sent you those photos of that cymbal I polished. And so that was a lot more work than I anticipated, but
had you never done that before?
Never done that before.
Oh,
I've always wanted to do it, and I've had that cymbal, I think 20 years, maybe longer. I've had that little cymbal.
Oh, really? Gosh. Dude, that's impressive.
I've had it so long. And when I've got some things in storage and different stuff, and so when I was over there one time, I'm like, I'm going to get this out. And I've had it at my house since I joined you guys. And so I just was like, man, every time I look at it, I'm like, I want to clean this thing up. And so I'm like, forget it. I'm just doing it. And it was about 2 hours. My arms were shaking when I was done, but I was so happy. I'm part of this one drum group online, and I was like, oh man, the cymbal purists, they're going to eat me alive. I was like, the second I post these pictures, they're just going to come after me, right? Because you got to keep it antique and authentic, right? And the dirt and the scars of the cymbal, you're ruining it. And I'm like, I'm going for it.
Well,
I put it online, and oh my gosh, dude, the comments I got, they're just awesome. I love it. People like the way they feel. I'm like, it's just a cymbal. Like,
it really is. I'll put up a picture you sent me. It is stunning. It looks brand new compared to what it was before.
Dude, to get the oxidation,
looks like a completely different cymbal.
It was like I had to get the drill out, right? So I got these pads on the drill, and it was like, and you can't let it get too hot, so you have to like get on it and get off it, and get on it and get off it, and you have to sit there and do that. And it's just like I worked in these little pies, and it was like, and once I got one pie good, like I did the bell first, and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so awesome. We're doing the whole thing. I was like,
yeah. Wow.
I know. I posted online. This one guy messaged me, and he's like, I ran out immediately today and bought the stuff you said, and it looks nothing like that. I'm like, oh man, don't do that. I go, how long did you do it for? So I private messaged him. I was like, how long did you do it for? If it's not 2 hours, you didn't put in enough work. I'm like, dude, you need straight elbow grease for this. It's not, you don't just rub it on and buff it off. That's not how it works. And
so, I wonder if you should do if you do do you have another cymbal you could do that too?
Yeah. I got tons.
Because maybe you could do a YouTube video.
So I recorded the whole thing.
You did? Okay, good. Yeah.
And so I started putting that together last night. The only thing is I got this new camera, and I put it on there. It's not as user-friendly as my phone. And so I'm like, so I didn't have enough time last night because, I go to bed early. I'm like an old man. So but I'm going to work on that. I did it in segments. And so I showed it at the beginning. I did some when we're polishing through it, and then I showed the end. And I recorded the whole thing, and I broke it up in a couple segments. But I want to put it online and show people.
You should. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, it was like the rags were just black. Like, I can't believe how dirty it is. Like you don't realize until you get in it what comes off those things.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that's insane. I mean, that's very cool. Yeah. So if you we should wrap this up because this is going to turn into a very long show if we don't. But if you can find that footage of Crack's first performance, don't knock yourself out.
Confident I have the tape.
Yeah. So that would be pretty cool to throw that in there. And I'll try to. Is there? I think I asked you this before, but is there any Pummel stuff online?
I have some records, and I have the MP3s. And, I'll kind of show you some of the main songs that we were, they were wanting to sign with, and I'll show you kind of what we were doing. And but we did a couple LP or EPs. And unsigned EPs, but just self-released. And we took the demos that they didn't do, and we just released them.
Would you have promo photos of the band and stuff like
that? Yeah, I got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, because that would be cool to throw up some of those.
Yeah, we were on a bunch of compilation CDs, so I got a bunch of those. I think I have about 10, 12, comp records with other bands we were on and releases. Yeah. Those ones were out with labels. And so not that label, but they were, they purchased the song to use it in that time. And, and so those were kind of cool. I like those because you get so much exposure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
we had that Blaggards had that sort of early on too. With our, I never hear about compilations anymore, but we did. Our a couple of our songs appeared on several different compilations. One of them was put together by Larry Kerwin of Black 47, who's legendary Celtic rock band out of New York. And I know for a fact that the efforts of Larry Kerwin in particular, and also John Bowles of Patty Rock Radio, John from Shite and Onions. So those guys had a lot to do with the arc of our fandom that has grown consistently over the past almost 2 decades now. So yeah, those compilation records are a big deal, or at least they were. I don't know how much they are now. But
yeah, you're right. You don't see them much anymore.
Well, nobody buys CDs.
It's nothing physical. Yeah, it's not physical.
Right. Playlists are the thing now. That's the new compilation record, or the playlists. Those are powerful as well. Anyhow,
cool.
We'll wrap this one up. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button because we do this every week. And if you're listening to the podcast, spread it around. Get as many people listening to this as possible. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Ireland tour is still booking. There are a lot of people going, but we still have room. So if you want to come with us to Ireland in October, get on blaggards.com. The contact information is there to talk to our friend Dennis at Doc's Irish Tours. He'll help you out. And I'm so excited for that. It's going to be so much fun.
Awesome.
This will be our first time going back since 2019. It'll be Kevin's first time going with us. So, but you've been to Ireland before, though. We talked about that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've done about 14 shows there.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
It's so crazy you've actually performed there already.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, a buddy of mine just signed up. He texted me the deal. So, him and his girl are going, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be so awesome.
Yes. And for those of you watching in the present day, this weekend we're going to be in College Station, February 18th, I believe, for the Great Guinness Toast. Big deal. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, y'all.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
See ya.